Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. In this particular episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about Trump's declaration of a national emergency so he can build his wall. And the reason I want to talk about that and how it relates to immigration is it completely distorts the reality of immigrants coming to the United States in order to apply for asylum. So I've had different videos on this before on different areas of this, but the Immigration and Nationality Act does permit those who are suffering persecution to come into the United States and apply for asylum. And to state that essentially those people who come in and apply for asylum is a national emergency is, number one, disingenuous off the scale, but it's an incorrect statement of the law, and the executive branch, being the president, doesn't have the power to simply disregard all of the asylum laws which were enacted by Congress and were signed into law by the president of that time. If Trump wants to get rid of all asylum applicants at the southern border, then Congress is going to have to enact legislation for that. It can't just be, that a quote national emergency exists, and that's one of the problems with the declaration of a national emergency. Now, there are other problems as well, and they're very significant constitutional problems. Now, as we have seen over the last 2.5 years, there's been a issue with Trump separating the duties of the executive branch and the judicial branch. Okay, and we have seen time and time again where there would be various declarations from the president, and it was overturned by the courts. Well, this is the first major time that now the president is trying to blur the separation of powers from the legislative branch, which is Congress, and the executive branch, which is the president, and trying to do that by essentially trying to get money for what he wants in which to build the wall. And why is this important? It's because the legislative branch, they are the branch that makes the laws. And in regards to immigration, they're the ones that make, the asylum laws, the deportation laws, the relief for deportation, all the laws that come into effect that affect immigrants is made by Congress. And when the president blurs the line between the duties of Congress and the duties of the executive branch, it then creates a problem with separation of powers. And the founding fathers made the separation of powers for a very specific reason. And it's shown today why that reason exists. It's so that one branch of the government doesn't exert power upon which they don't have to get what they want, which in this case, the Congress has spoken. They passed the resolution and the law as to how much the president would get for border security. And it was passed by the Senate, the House, and it was signed by the president. Well, that's that is showing that the Congress, who represents the people of the United States, have done what the people of the United States wants. Now, everybody might not be happy with it, but that would be the procedure. Now, when the president goes and decides that, okay, he didn't get enough for his wall and he's going to just pull money from somewhere else, then what he's doing is he is disregarding the power that the legislative branch has under the Constitution of the United States and just trying to do things on his own, as a monarchy would do, a dictator, someone who doesn't recognize the Constitution of the United States. Now, obviously, what's going to happen is the judicial branch is going to be pulled in here, and they're going to rule on the violation of separation of powers, because you have to have it separate in order to maintain the integrity of the Constitution and to maintain the integrity of what power each branch has. Because when one exceeds the power that they're given, then you have a constitutional crisis. This just isn't a matter of the president just wanting more money. Okay, it's not. That's not the real issue here. It's what he is doing in order to try to get more money, and it makes the congressional laws which were passed almost seem like it's a joke if you can just go around and not respect what the legislature is doing. So I made this video to put a little light on what has occurred, and probably what's going to happen is, first of all, what the president thought would happen. It's going to go first to a district court, and it'll probably go on the Ninth Circuit, although there's probably going to be a lot of states that will join. Then it'll be appealed up to the Ninth Circuit, and it's almost clear that this is such a blatant violation of separation of powers between the executive and the legislative branch that an injunction will probably issue stopping any further act on this matter until a final decision is made, which ultimately will get to the Supreme Court. Now, there's another issue with the Supreme Court. Now, Trump was saying in his Rose Garden speech that he knows it's going to be filed in the Ninth Circuit. He knows he's going to be ruled against in the Ninth Circuit, and he believes that he'll get a fair shake when it gets to the Supreme Court. Now, the way that he was talking would indicate that he believes, because he has appointed two people to the Supreme Court of the United States, that they're just naturally going to rule in his favor. And that also is an issue and a problem, because the reason that Supreme Court justices are there for life is so that they can step back and they don't have to rule and fear that because of how they rule there'll be reprisals, that they'll be fired or that they'll be out of a job. No, they are there for life so that they will be able to rule independently. And that's a key word, independently from the executive branch. They are not part of the executive branch. The two justices that were nominated and now on the Supreme Court because of Trump are not part of Trump's cabinet. They are not beholden to Trump. They may be ideologically more closer to what Trump thinks than, for example, what Obama thought, but still they are bound by the law and by the separation of powers. So when it gets up to the Supreme Court, I do believe that Trump will be a bit disappointed with how the rulings will go, because they're not going to rule in Trump's favor just because Trump appointed them, and I believe that's what he thinks. So as you can see, all kinds of issues with the declaration of emergency powers, but hopefully the courts will take care of it, and ultimately when it gets to the Supreme Court, hopefully they will rule based on the application of law and nothing else. So if you like the video, click like, subscribe, and more on the coming videos. Thank you.